In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the sumptuous and palatial SHR Media Network studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, count 'em 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast. Yes, that's correct. The Capitol building, downtown Sacramento at 10th and L Street. We'll get into that a little bit later. You got a belly up to the bar, we've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Tonight, Blaine is going to be your bartender. He pours with the best of them, and the lava lamp is in fact lighted to my left, your right, indicating that you can listen and chat at shrmedia.com. Listen and chat at shrmedia.com. That's where everybody's in the chat room right now. We got Mike in chat, we got the Alaskan in chat, we got Andy Wood in chat, we got 2 viewers in chat. More to come. Trust me on that one. By the way, today is Thursday. It is May 23rd, the year of our Lord 2019. I gotta tell you this, we don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law, we talk about it all right here at the Saloon. Nothing is sacred, the speech is free, but the booze, it is not. All that we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Very importante. Muy importante that you do this. Going to be a great show tonight. One thing I will say in retrospect, I hope you guys happened to listen to the chat show last night, because 2 very important things happened. One of them not so important. Well, three things occurred. It almost was a Sackheads radio show. Now, if we'd had, like he promised, if Clint had actually called in, like he promised, then there would have been 3, the original 3 Sackheads. But no, Clint didn't do that. So instead, there was Sackheads Sean over in the Clint chair, and Sackheads BZ sitting right here. And we had a great show. We opened up the phone lines. A lot of people called in. We had a very important question, and a great time was had by all. In retrospect, you can go to shrmedia.com and watch it there, or see it there, I should say. And or you can find it on Spreaker, and or you can go to any number of places. I'm going to put some social media out about that. I had a little doctor's appointment this morning, so I was feeling a little run down. Now I'm feeling better. Oh, hey, Iggy Mom. Hello, Dave Milner, Iggy Mom, and 1 viewer. So thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, this is how the show is going to go tonight. I have contacted her probably, I'd say maybe about 45 minutes, maybe an hour ago. Oh, as a matter of fact, here we go. Hang on, folks. Let's see. Would this happen to be Shannon Wright?
It would indeed.
Okay. Outstanding. Here's the reason, Shannon, and we're going to get into the whole gist of it tonight. I wanted you to call on this number. This is our new studio number, and it goes direct into the board. And the cool thing about this is this number sounds much better than any other number we've had before. It's a lot better than Skype. It's a lot better than Facebook. It's got some bass to it. It's got some treble. So I wanted to make sure that we give you the best option to talk to us tonight.
Awesome.
But there's a really important reason why I wanted to have you on tonight. Well, Shannon Wright, good evening. And thank you so kindly for taking time out of your busy schedule and also for appearing so late at night, because here on the left coast, it's only a little after 8 p.m., but where you are right now, on the East Coast, it's 11 p.m., so thank you. Now,
it is, and you're welcome.
I had you and your husband, Mike Wright, on my show back in September of last year. You both are right here on the SHR Media Network, Monday through Friday, and you guys have your own morning show, The Right Way with Shannon and Mike. But
Yes.
something important has happened since then and has changed since then. Now, you and I were corresponding on social media, and when I discovered what decision you recently made, I knew immediately right then and there that I had to get you on the show. So, Shannon Wright, let's just cut to the chase up front. What big decision have you recently made?
Well, I have decided to run for mayor of Baltimore.
Okay. Trust me when I tell you this, Shannon Wright, I have a lot of questions for you tonight. Okay. But before we go further, and because I do have a lot of questions, I want to get back into and address the basics. Now, with you running for mayor of Baltimore, where can your website be found for that regarding your candidacy for Baltimore mayor?
My campaign website, my political website, is rightformaryland.com.
Okay. So let me repeat that again for those of you who just tuned in and for those who are in El Salvador and they're tuning in on wireless radio right now. Right for Maryland. That's WRIGHT. All one word, rightformaryland.com. Another very important question, which I think is salient. Is this where people can donate to your campaign if they wish to support you?
Oh, it absolutely is. Big and bold on the front page at the top is the word donate.
Okay. So excellent. There's no mistaking that then.
On that, nope. When you click on that, the computer will do the rest.
Okay. A lot of questions come to my mind, but one of the first one is, because I simply do not know, when does this election occur?
This election occurs in November of 2020.
2020. Okay. So you're starting early, but I imagine that most everybody else is starting at the same point, right?
Well, some folks are, a few are. But there's a reason why we're starting so early. Baltimore has not elected a Republican in over 70 years.
Oh, imagine that.
Not even for dog catcher. So in order for us to have a chance, we have to, and this is kind of the plan, take the next 3 or 4 months to hit the base, the hard Republicans, the moderate Republicans, the soft Republicans, and let them understand that it is imperative, just because of the way the folks that are politically motivated and involved look at things, it is imperative that we get them energized and involved and to realize that it is important for them to come out for the primary. The primary is in April of 2020. So we're spending the next 3 or 4 months reaching the base, and then the next 4 or 5 months after that, reaching out to independents. And about 6 months from now, we will start reaching out to soft Dems. In order to make that happen, we are running, as my husband put it, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
And
yes,
it's systematic and it's step by step. And I am working each and every step.
You know, I went to go look because I wasn't sure. I discovered that there are a little over 619,000 people in Baltimore. So that's kind of daunting, isn't it?
It is. You know, it's funny. The population of Baltimore is bigger than the 6th congressional district in New Jersey where we used to live.
That's rather significant. Like I say, that, I don't know, maybe not you, that would give me pause. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll get to the position of mayor and your involvement in Baltimore politics in a moment. But first, a couple of things have happened since I last spoke to you. I'm broadcasting on a new network, the Big Sarge Media, and I've gotten a lot more listeners now. And I say that because there are some folks that are listening now who are not familiar with you, haven't heard you yet in the morning on SHR, and didn't listen to my show with you last September. So, Shannon Wright, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you can, where you grew up, your background, your education, faith, things of that nature.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the straight to the point and honest approach.
Okay.
I was born in New York. I spent the first 5 years of my life in New York. I was born to a single teenage mom. When she took me home from the hospital, we moved into my grandparents' apartment in the projects in New York. My mother realized some harsh life lessons looking at me and looking at where we were, and realized the one true way for her to get us out of there was education. So I would go to school during the day. She would go to work. I would come home from school. My grandparents would watch me, and she, after work, would go to school until she graduated. And she realized that there were certain things that she needed to do, that she had the power to do, to be able to change the trajectory for the both of us. And she did it.
That's an amazing story. That's a great story.
Yeah, my mom was a great lady. She passed away about, this year will be 10 years.
Okay.
But she was a very determined woman. So
my dad
she taught some lessons, some valuable lessons.
My dad passed away in 2009, so I'm guessing your mom she passed away in 2009 as well?
Well, 2010.
Okay.
2010.
Okay.
So, it'll be 9 years this year.
So let's go back a little bit. Folks don't realize also that you have a radio show here on SHR. So what made you and Mike decide you wanted to get involved in wireless radio and do a show in the first place? Because I think they're connected. I think these things are all connected.
So I was doing a guest spot, a regular guest spot on one of the shows on SHR Media, and the conversation came up that I was kind of good at doing it, and asked if I would consider doing my own show with a co-host, and I said, well, I would do it as long as I get to pick my co-host. And they were interested enough that they let me pick my co-host, which is my husband.
Perfect.
So we're on at 7 a.m. on the East Coast, and I said, if you want me to be lively and bubbly and the show to be entertaining as well as informative, the person sitting next to me has to really know me, I have to really know them, and we have to be able to bounce well off each other. Because sounding amusing and entertaining at 7 a.m. is not always easy.
No, I imagine not. Would I be correct in hazarding a guess that there's probably coffee in there somewhere?
Oh, a whole bunch of it. All different types. Like right now, we've got a breakfast blend in there. We've got a creme brulee, a mocha, and a French vanilla. So you can kind of pick and choose as the mood needs.
I said this before in the show. I'm not sure that I embarrassed you. I'm going to say it again. I'm not sure it'll embarrass you. But I said, and I truly believe then, as now, that you have one of the best voices ever for radio. You could talk me. Number one, I could listen to you easily 2 hours, 3 hours in a row. Easy. And you could probably talk me into doing just about anything that you told me to do. You do, in fact, have like the ultimate radio voice. I'm just saying, just laying it out there, which is another reason, folks, you need to listen to the show. Okay, I feel better. I feel better. Even before putting your hat in the ring for mayor of Baltimore, now it's my understanding you were already involved in Baltimore politics, right?
Just a little bit.
Okay, so Shannon Wright, tell us about that position. Tell us what you do and what made you want to do it in the first place. Why get into politics? You talk about it a little bit on your show, but now you jumped in with both feet.
I did. I jumped in with both of my feet and threw my husband's in there too. Just for good measure, a little extra. So when we moved to Baltimore, it was really to try and take some time, regroup, and decide, since God had given us a chance to reinvent ourselves, who we wanted to be. We were living in New Jersey until Hurricane Sandy decided we didn't need a house in New Jersey anymore.
Holy moly!
Yeah, it was an experience. The kids were gone. It was really a big old house, and Mike and I had started to have conversations about how we really didn't need all this space, and it was much easier to take care of when all four of the kids were at home, because then they all had chores, and it made it so much easier. But when I had asked the cat to vacuum, it didn't have the same effect. So it was time for us to reevaluate, and the hurricane came along and said, "Hey, let me help you make this decision."
Okay.
So we both have family in Maryland. We came to Baltimore, and I had decided in my mind it was temporary, and God said, "No, it's not." And a friend of ours called one Sunday afternoon, and he said, "Listen, there's some stuff going on here in the city, and I really want you to get involved." And I said, "Okay, sure." And then he said, "So I want you to run for city council president." And I laughed. Once I stopped laughing, I said, "Are you all right? Are you smoking, drinking, injectable? What are you doing?" I mean, I just wanted to know. I was curious what I was dealing with. So he said, "Well, I'm going to give you a couple of days, and I'm going to call you back." And he did. And he said, "Okay, hold on a second." And I said, "Okay," thinking he was getting another call and putting me on hold. But he called the Baltimore City Central Committee chair, and when he came back, had him on the line with us. So I said, "Okay, well, we can talk. That's fine." So we went to lunch, and between the time we spoke and the time we went to lunch, he had been shown some of the blogging that I'd done and some of the videos from some of the different rallies and things that I'd spoken at and all of that. Mm-hmm. So he had already made it up in his mind that I was going to run for office. And I did. It was a battle. It really was a battle.
Now, what position was this? What office were you battling for?
City council president.
Okay.
I was running against someone on the Republican side, so I had a primary, and it was a gentleman that had put his name on the ballot for something in every election cycle for the last 10 years. So he had some name recognition that we had to overcome. So it was definitely a battle and a challenge, but that year was a pivotal year. I was on the ballot 4 times that year, or on a ballot 4 times that year. I had my primary for city council president, which I won. I was on the ballot for RNC delegate, which I won.
Wow.
For the 2016 convention in Ohio. And I lost the general election for city council president, but the last election that my name was on a ballot for was state party vice chair for the Republican Party of Maryland, and I won that as well.
Very nice. Very nice. And now, how long has that been?
That since 2016.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of interesting shifts in the political landscape in Baltimore.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Oh, yeah. Oh,
gosh, yeah.
boy, are
So,
you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's kind of an understatement. But there had been some shifts in the state as well. So in the process of, during the time that I was serving as vice chair for the state party, I also became the Maryland Black Republican Council chairwoman as well. So, and
Excellent.
I'm on the Central Committee in Baltimore City. But our chairman decided he was not going to run for chairman again in Baltimore and really wanted me to look at it and consider it and just do it. So I did. And we knew I couldn't wear all three hats. So I served one term as vice chair of the state party.
Okay.
And I am in Baltimore full time. I am the chairwoman of the Baltimore City Republican Central Committee. I am the first female chair, and by extension, the first black female chair. And in case your listeners didn't know, yes, I'm black.
Yeah, yes. That's, for somebody that didn't wake up one day and, I don't know, at a young age say, or I don't know, maybe you did. Did you wake up one day when you were, I don't know, 10, 12 or something like that and say, one day I'm going to get into politics bigly, in a bigly way?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so that leads...
That was nowhere on my radar.
That leads to, I believe, the next obvious question, which is this, Shannon Wright. Why do you want to be the mayor of Baltimore?
Well, because you know what? I'm going to keep it real with you.
Okay.
There are so many problems and so many issues in this city that are not being addressed, that somebody who is willing to take no prisoners and get her done needs to be willing to put their name on the ballot. And my grandmother always said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
And there's enough problems here, so I want to be part of the solution.
How many people at this point do you know that are running for mayor? And what kind of people are they like? What's their politics? Or let me cut to the chase again, like you say. Are you the only Republican running? Are you it?
No. Well, I don't know. I that's the best way I could put that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. But my guess would be there are a host of Democrats that are that have made it that have made it plain they're either going to run, or they're running now, or they're going to be running in the very close future, I would guess.
Yes. Absolutely. There are quite a few. They range from the current city council president to members of the city council, even to Ben Jealous, who last election cycle ran for governor of Maryland and won the Democrat primary.
Okay. All righty.
He has decided he's going to move to Baltimore so that he could run for mayor.
Okay. My guess would be that one of the qualifications is you must live within the city of Baltimore limits?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So he doesn't, he's going to, is what you're saying, just for the election.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. I like clarity. I always value honesty and clarity. Always good. Like you say, the city of Baltimore has pretty much always been a bastion of Democrats and people leaning to the left. And, like you say, there hasn't been a Democrat in Baltimore for a mayor since, 1700s or maybe the 1600s or even before that. So.
Well, not quite that long, but
pretty long. Okay. So again, I want to emphasize, and I'm trying to set you apart here. What makes you think that you can be the breaker of chains and the mother of dragons? Some people would. Some people are saying, "Look, Shannon,
analogy.
Aren't you just tilting at windmills? Come on, get serious now, Shannon Wright. You're tilting at windmills here."
Let me say this: I loved the analogy. Forgive me. There's going to be a little squeak for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So I love the analogy. The breaker of chains and the mother of dragons, with the exception of the last episode or two.
Yeah,
we got to kind of, diverge a little bit from that one.
She go a bit afield, but you get the analogy. You get the point.
I do. So, no, I'm not tilting at windmills. I'm not the type to waste my time or my energy on that. So here's why I'm running and what I intend to do. There are, in Baltimore City, there are 14 councilmanic districts. The city is broken into 14 parts.
Okay.
Each of those parts has 18 to 20 precincts. Okay? In each of those precincts, in each of those districts, there are Republicans that have felt outvoted, outmanned, outnumbered, outgunned, out everything for a long, long time. And I want to give them hope. There are independents in the city that are independent because they were, quite frankly, tired of both parties and really wanted somebody that would address policy that benefits people and not parties. I want to give them hope. And there are Democrats that vote Democrat because that's what their mothers did and their fathers did and their grandparents did, and really also are not happy with the choices that they have. And I want to give them hope. Change comes from somebody believing.
Didn't somebody say, and I'm just throwing the quote out there, all politics is local? And I'm not trying to cast shadows or trying to prognosticate the future, anything like that. But I'm just saying that, okay, in your bid for mayor of Baltimore, if this political thing hits, so to speak, would you be interested in a different or a further role in politics? Or are you just going to wait and see how things go with Baltimore for right now?
Wow, that's an interesting question. And a pretty loaded one, too. So,
well, it's interesting in terms of people. I've heard stories of people who have gotten into politics when they thought they were going to enjoy it, discovered that they absolutely did not and didn't want to have anything to do with it again. And subsequently, there were people that got into politics, were reformers and thought, okay, I've achieved A, I think I can do better at B.
So one of the hard lessons that I've learned in the last 5 to 10 years is that my plan doesn't matter. God's plan matters. So I'm going to go where he tells me to go. Okay. Right now, he's telling me to plant my roots right here in this soil and fight for this city.
Okay.
And that's what I'm going to do.
All righty. Folks, we're listening to Shannon Wright. And if you weren't aware, she and her husband, Mike, have a radio show earlier in the morning right here on the SHR Media Network. And I highly recommend that you listen to both her and Mike. It's called The Right Way with Shannon and Mike right here, shrmedia.com. Not like I'm having a plug or anything, but she's also running for the mayor of Baltimore. We're at the bottom of the hour. If you are kind enough to say yes, I'd like to continue with you over the break, if that's okay with you.
I'm all yours.
Okay. And when we get back after the break, I'd like to start getting into some more specifics. You mentioned early on that Baltimore is going through a bit of a tumultuous time right now. So when we come back, I want to ask Shannon Wright a little bit about the mayor's job and maybe a bit about what has happened recently to the Baltimore mayor, like these days. So we're listening to Shannon Wright. She's running for the mayor of Baltimore. I am BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin, and you are listening to the Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. We'll be right back with Shannon Wright after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California from the SHR Media studios. 2 miles east of the veritable belly of the beast, the Bill Mill, the locus of evil on the entire West Coast, at 10th and L, the Capitol building. And we're talking for the first hour to Shannon Wright, has a radio show here in the morning, Monday through Friday, with her husband, Mike, and it's The Right Way, WRIGHT, The Right Way, with Shannon and Mike. And Shannon is running for mayor of Baltimore. Before the break, I said, hey, let's talk about the mayor a little bit. My understanding is that it is or was, I think was now, let's see, Christine Pugh, and she got into a little bit of a kerfuffle, didn't she, Shannon Wright?
Yes, it was, we could call it a little bit of a kerfuffle. So Mayor Pugh, Kathleen Pugh, decided before becoming mayor, to be on the board of different organizations and all that sort of things. And she wrote a book, and slowly things began to unwind for her, or unravel, I should say, where there were some lines crossed in some gray areas that looked a little bit unethical, let's just say.
Okay.
In some of the ways that she handled some of her contracts and the boards that she sat on, and the purchase of her book in a way that really blurred the lines between campaign finance. Those things started to unravel close to the tune of $1 million.
Whoa.
Yeah. There was one particular day a few weeks back where there was a raid on City Hall in her office, her home, as well as some of her other business ventures around the city. There was a raid, a simultaneous raid of 7 or 8 locations, all to gather information with regards to our now former mayor, Catherine Pugh.
Okay, so I'm guessing that there is a temporary mayor pending next year?
Yes. The former city council president, according to our city charter, is elevated to the office of mayor, and he is handling that office, if you will, until the election. He has said he's not running for mayor. I don't know that hasn't or won't change, but I do know that he's just not instilling confidence. When Mayor Pugh was becoming suspect of a lot of things,
okay.
The talk of the town was that although she had some involvement in a lot of different things she probably shouldn't have, that she was indeed not the mastermind. The thought process was that was folks further up the Democratic food chain.
Okay.
And that she just basically got caught. But there's also widespread speculation that our interim mayor, Jack Young, was a part of some of the same deals. So part of what happened was the city decided to review some 90 or so contracts that were signed off on by the Board of Estimates. And according to our charter, the Board of Estimates is made up of the city council president, the mayor, and the comptroller. So when Jack Young, who is now acting mayor, says that he wants to audit and review the contracts signed off on by the city, he's also a signatory on those contracts.
Oopsie.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh. I'm sorry.
So I want to make it clear that the mayor got caught with her hand in the cookie jar. The city council president stepped up. He decreed that we are going to review the contract signed off on by the city, all of which also have his signature.
Ah, weird. How does that happen?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I can't figure it out.
Yeah. So, of course, I would imagine that those contracts, will come back in an interesting way, their reviews and audits, because, of course, as I said, he also signed off on them. What has gotten more interesting even than the out-of-control homicide rate, all of the shootings in the city, the jobs and companies leaving the city,
right.
the shambles of an education system, what's gotten even more interesting than all that in the last 2 days is there's, as I said, been widespread speculation that Catherine Pugh was not the top of the food chain in terms of the things that she was involved in. And in the last 2 days, there have been some charges leveled against Mrs. Cummings, who is the Maryland Democratic chair, and her husband, Congressman Elijah Cummings. And I'm sure even on the West Coast, that name is probably familiar to some of your listeners.
Yes. Watched him many a time in a hearing recently.
Mm-hmm. So he and his wife have, in the last 2 days, been accused of some improprieties and perhaps even misappropriations, and we'll kind of see where that goes. There's also the speculation that you may have also heard currently, as of the last maybe couple of weeks at this point, the city of Baltimore has been held cyber hostage.
Yes.
And we were hit with
Yes.
a ransomware attack, and the interim mayor has decided not to pay, and he would rather rebuild the system. Now, if the mayor felt she needed to resign because of some things coming to light, and there were raids, there were different departments in the administration, her administration, implicated. The city council president becomes mayor, calls for an audit of the contracts that he also signed off on, and then interestingly enough, there's a cyberware ransom attack.
No! Shannon Wright! That's terrible. Get out of town. That can't be right.
It is terrible. It is terrible. And doggone it, we're not going to give in to those terrorists, and we're not going to pay. And if we lose all of our data from every doggone agency and department with the exception of 911 and 311, so be it. We will just upgrade and start over.
That's right, because as you and I well know, Shannon Wright, who's running for mayor of Baltimore, money just grows on trees. We'll get some more money. It doesn't matter where it comes from. We'll find our way out of this mess.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, since we're going to stand up to these terrorists and not pay, all of the data in all of the agencies and departments that supports the FBI's ongoing investigation, poof, is gone.
Wow. You know, I got to tell you this, though. I think that is just a coincidence. And if anybody tries to attribute anything more than just coincidence to that, well, you've got to be wearing tinfoil, right, Shannon Wright?
Exactly. It must be a coincidence.
It is.
It has to be. Yes.
Okay, so we know that Baltimore is no stranger.
But it's a coincidence, and I have a really nice bridge for you if you want to buy it. I'm just saying.
Right, because, you know, in Baltimore's history, this kind of stuff has never happened before. We have never had mayors that were challenging or people on the city council that were challenging. We didn't have riots in 1965. We didn't have riots in 2015. Resulting from Freddie Gray. So, you know, Baltimore is it's a really quiet and sedentary kind of place. Not really much is happening. Okay, let me throw this out too. Baltimore State Attorney Marilyn Mosby and the Baltimore Police Department are not, shall we say, the best of friends these days. And I think recently, I know. I hope you're sitting down. I hope you were sitting down when I said that. Okay, my understanding is that Marilyn Mosby has already said that she will no longer be prosecuting anybody for marijuana in any case or in any event. So I have to ask this just because of the recent tumultuous times involving Baltimore. Do you think that fences can be mended in Baltimore? And as mayor, what do you think the mayor's role should be in something like that?
I think fences have to be mended.
Yes.
In order for the city to function and to move forward. So, as mayor, I would certainly say to folks that it's in the best interest of the city for everyone to come together and attempt to put their own personal issues aside and put the benefit of the people of Baltimore first. And then I would say, if you can't find a way to do it out of the goodness of your heart, suck it up, eat a lemon, and do it anyway.
Shannon Wright, the challenges are huge in Baltimore, but, you know, can't it easily be said that, look, hey, we've tried the Democrat way for years here, decades here, literally. Yeah. Why can't we try another way? What have we got to lose except, some kind of a real actual potential for success? So I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know, the definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing, or in this case, voting the same way and expecting a different result. It's not going to happen.
No.
So if you want to see something different, if you want to get something different, you have to do something different. And in this case, that means voting different.
This, and I'm suspecting this is going to be an issue, but I'm just throwing it out there because I honestly do not know, and I want to find out what you think. I realize that family and faith are very important to you. And so can someone who believes in faith and family even have a seat at a table in Baltimore?
Not only have a seat, but have the head seat at the table. Because from the beginning of time, it's only those that claim to be of faith that have a mission, a mandated mission, to be able to live in accordance to certain early rules in the beginning that were set down. So absolutely. Absolutely.
Number one, exactly what I wanted to hear, because I knew you were going to kind of say it anyway. I really did. And number two, okay, here you are. You're the mayor of Baltimore. You have won. It's been a tough, hard-fought race, and now you've been voted by the biggest of margin or the slightest of margin. Immaterial, you are now Baltimore mayor. What do you think you might want to make or do as one of your first priorities there as mayor?
Well, funny you should ask that. It's funny, when I talk to my campaign team, they say, well, we're going to get into strategy, but right now it's fundraise, then it's voter contact, then it's strategy. Yeah, well, they're slowly learning that, well, I do things a little differently.
You're not rolling that way.
In my mind, strategy in terms of what I want to see different in the city and what I would prioritize is absolutely important and crucial.
Okay.
So one of the first things, three things. The first of which would be education. The poverty level in Baltimore is off the charts, and the best sustainable way to fix that is to improve our education system so that this generation, the ones behind it, have a chance at a future where they can actually compete in a global marketplace. And I would even go so far as to say that those schools should be community-based so that the parents and the children can find resources and tools to help them move forward as a family. Because of the way the political structure is chartered, the Baltimore City Board of Education is appointed, not elected. Because of the issues that Baltimore has had, the governor gets to appoint half the board and the mayor the other half. Now, because of the opposite views politically, that board has never really been unified. So for me, I would want to look to recruit Board of Education members that would agree and commit to moving Baltimore towards a 100% voucher and charter school district. I would want to force each school to compete for the dollars attached to each student. That's first.
Wow, Shannon Wright, in and of itself, that one goal is heady. It's huge. It's an amazing goal, and I would go so far as to easily say, wow, don't you think that's an idea whose time has passed coming? I mean, that seems to me to be incredibly important to do something like that. Competition.
Yes.
What a concept. What an idea.
Yep. So that would be priority number one.
Okay.
Priority number two would be to enact certain policies, small things, that make Baltimore business friendly. And invite folks in to take a look at the port here and see how we can maximize resources to make that a hub that it once was and should be and can be again. To look at ways that we can incentivize businesses to want to come back into the city. If you can improve the schools, you're already moving down that road. I would kind of partner those two together in that the school's curriculum, I would look at trade very heavily. College is not right for everyone, especially not 4, 8, 6, or 12 years. It's just not right for everyone. I think we need to bring the trades back into the schools so that folks can earn a fair minimum a fair wage far above the minimum without that minimum being dictated by someone else. If we give people the tools and the resources that they can earn what they believe they're worth, you don't have to worry about living wage. You don't have to worry about minimum wage. You don't have to worry about giving everybody a wage, because people will have the tools and the resources to earn it for themselves and to be able to go as far as they decide to go in their chosen career path if we give them the right tools and resources. And I think that's a priority. Now, if we also then take that a step further and look at the curriculum, and we try to make a shift from Common Core to common sense, so that the curriculum actually matches the trends, then we have a better opportunity to create a system where people can graduate, both youth and adults can graduate and be competitive in a global marketplace. That's imperative.
You've hit upon some things that, in my estimation, are absolutely critical for a city that, unfortunately, too many large cities are not addressing these days. Education. Well, you're starting at education, which also happens to ring true with the family, which is one of the things that you're involved in, faith and family. My guess would be your goal upon that is to try to allay people's fears and let them know, look, I want to make Baltimore the kind of a place where you can go as a family and be assured that your kids are going to get a good education. Now, whether that be by way of the public school system or by way of vouchers, my goal is to try to make it attractive to you to get families here. And the other thing that you said that just rang, I didn't do it to you because I didn't want to blow your ears out. But when you said trades, the first thing I reached for was my little bell, which I hit when people have an idea and they knock it out of the park. The U.S. government right now is in charge of tuitions, and therefore, just like you said, there's no competition with the U.S. government. Kids are walking away with $100,000, $150,000 in debt, and they're working at Starbucks, pulling the handle on the machine that goes. And if they can get into the trades, you can make more money up front being a competent worker in the trades and make more money than some of these people are going to make in the first 5 or 10 years trying to work their way up from Starbucks, for example. So I have to tell you, Shannon Wright, you are spot on in what you want to do.
I appreciate hearing that. I know that it's going to be a long haul. The next 16 months are going to be quite the battle. But if we can focus on getting out there now what our message is and what our priorities would be, I think folks, if they take party out of it, and just listen to the policies that I would like to put in place and how positively they will affect families and by extension neighborhoods and by extension communities and therefore the city, I think they'd be hard-pressed to find fault with it, honestly. You improve education, you make the city more appealing to employers, you then have the tools and the resources to combat public safety and crime.
Yes.
Because that is the last stumbling block.
It's funny you mentioned public safety and crime because a very interested person in chat, Dave Milner, says, hey, ask Shannon Wright this question if you would. Ask her how she feels about military or law enforcement recruitment in schools in Baltimore. Well,
personally, I don't really have a problem with it. But I think that there are some other things that we need to do first in the schools in Baltimore. For example, our resource officers, and we are the only municipality in this state, our resource officers are not allowed to carry their service weapons in school buildings.
Okay.
So I do believe that we need to be able to recruit. I do believe both for the police and the military, for all sorts of public servants and military. I do believe that we should be able to recruit in the schools, but I also think that we have to be able to spotlight and showcase those career paths in a positive way, which means untying the hands of those that represent that represent public safety every day in our children's schools.
You have nailed that. Now, I do not know, and I'm guessing you're going to inform me, but I don't remember hearing any school shootings in Baltimore recently, or am I wrong?
You are unfortunately incorrect.
Okay.
This legislative season, there was a bill put out there to be able to change that and to allow resource officers in the city of Baltimore to carry their weapons.
Okay.
It was actually, there was a Democrat version in the state Senate and in the state legislature, and a Republican version in the state Senate. The state Senate bill did not move forward, and the school board in the city voted to not support that piece of legislation. So the legislator pulled it from consideration. 3 days later was the first school shooting in Baltimore City.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. Let me ask you this, because let's see, we've got about 3 more minutes left. What do you think, Shannon Wright, is going to be one of your biggest challenges in terms of getting your message across to the citizens of the city of Baltimore? In other words, it's like medium and message. Alvin Toffler's the medium is the message. Number one, I think you have a great message. Number two, I think you are the spot-on messenger for that message. But what kind of roadblocks do you see in your way to getting across the message that you have, which I think is exquisite, and the ability to let people know who you really are?
Money, in one word.
Okay.
Fundraising and money.
Okay.
That's it. You know, you can have the best message in the world, but if nobody can hear it, it's kind of a moot point. So for that reason, our team is really focused right now on fundraising. My goal is to get 1,000 people across this country that are willing to support positive change in Baltimore by committing and donating $20 a month until November of 2020. $20 a month.
Okay.
Less than you pay with that college degree to pour that coffee at Starbucks when you go and buy it. Less than your week's supply of Starbucks coffee.
Okay, that's a perfect time for this. You want to do that, folks? Here's where you go. Write for Maryland. WRIGHT. WriteForMaryland.com. So you can go there. You can look at what she's got. You can look at what she's doing. If you just go to your favorite search engine and go to Shannon Wright, Mayor of Baltimore, you're going to find a whole bunch of. She's done an interview before. I'm looking at that right now with another person who interviewed you. WriteForMaryland.com. WRIGHT for Maryland.com. Now, of the time that we've had here tonight, Shannon Wright, is there anything that I missed or something that you want to make sure that people know about you or your campaign before we go tonight?
This campaign that we're running is for me as an individual to win the election and become mayor of Baltimore. But more importantly than that, this campaign is about all of our cities and giving hope to people in all of the Baltimores around the country that change is possible, and not to lose hope and not to lose faith. You know, we're not the only city with these issues, but I certainly think that we can be one of the first to turn that tide and show other people, one, that we can do it here, and you can do it at your home too.
What a message. I'm going to say it again. Write for Maryland, WRIGHT for Maryland.com. You can go there, see what Shannon Wright is about. You can donate. Write, WRIGHT, Write for Maryland.com. So, Shannon Wright, thank you ever so kindly for being here with me tonight at this admitted late hour, because it's 9 o'clock here, which means it's midnight, the magic witching hour where you are. And thank you for talking with me about your candidacy for mayor of Baltimore. Thank you again. God bless. Best wishes. And I got to ask this, of course, the door is always open if you want to come back and maybe give us some updates on your campaign. So I'd love to have you back.
Thank you, and I will happily come back.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks for staying up late, Shannon. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
We're going to go on a break right now. Folks, that was SHR Media's very own Shannon Wright talking about her bid for the big job of mayor of Baltimore, Maryland. That's one heck of a leap. But when we come back, I'm going to be featuring an SHR Media network special report. I'm going to be talking about the GWIC. GWIC? What? What are you talking about? Oh, you know, the Global Warming Industrial Complex.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. Thanks to Shannon Wright for being here for a full hour. I greatly appreciate that. That was very, very nice of her. She's running for mayor of Baltimore in 2020, November of 2020. So she's got a ways to go. Let's help her out if you can. Write for Maryland. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to donate. Write for Maryland. WRIGHT. WriteForMaryland.com. The second hour, this is a very simple show tonight. Extremely simple. 2 topics. Number 1, talking about Shannon Wright and her candidacy for mayor of Baltimore. And number 2 tonight, talking about an SHR Media special report.
This is an SHR Media Network special report.
And it's all about the global warming industrial complex. And if you doubt that such a thing exists, fie on you, shame on you, for it truly does exist. Now, maybe you were thinking that I was going to talk about the footsteps that all sorts of people, you know what I mean, are hearing these days following William Barr's admonishment to certain personnel in terms of, I think I may have an investigation just for you. Wouldn't that be lovely? No, that's going to be next week, and I have a ton of information about that. And you may be thinking that, okay, well, BZ, you could talk about Theresa May not having a job in the next 24 hours. Well, no, I'm not going to address that because I don't know exactly where that's breaking at this point. But I do want to tell you about the massive scam that is the global warming industrial complex. And it's predicated, well, kind of like this. First, what if everything you knew was wrong, and subsequently everything you wanted to do built off of that fake premise or assumption? Well, that was wrong as well. And if you think so, to that I would say, you know what? Meet the LDAM and the religious left. The LDAM, it's important to recognize that the LDAM, the leftist Democrats and the American media maggots, they have an all-out war on science. And you may think, well, no, come on. They're the people that hold up science and say it's a wonderful thing. No, they have an all-out war on science in general. Kind of less specifically global warming, but a war on science from the left. Most deaf.
Politicians don't believe in science.
The Republicans are showing themselves to be anti-science.
Once again, the Republican Party looks like it's the anti-science party.
The media say there's a conservative war on science. But is that true?
The real war on science is the one from the left.
For 25 years, John Tierney's written about science for the New York Times. He often questions conventional wisdom, as in this story, which revealed the pointlessness of much recycling.
It set a record for hate mail at the New York Times Magazine.
Now Tierney writes for the Manhattan Institute's City Journal, where he recently argued that the real war on science comes from the left. That seems odd, since surveys show people on the right are more likely to believe in creationism.
Right, but creationism doesn't affect science. It doesn't affect the way science is done.
But wait, what about President Bush's opposition to...
We talked about that last night on the Chat Show. Basically, we said that God, creation, etc., religion and science do not have to be in conflict. That is not a gimme.
Stem cell research.
Destroying human life in the hopes of saving human life is not ethical.
He didn't stop stem cell research.
It was just the government wouldn't fund it.
The government wouldn't fund it.
Pay for it.
And it turned out that it really didn't matter much. People talk about this Republican war on science, but if you look around, my question is, where are the casualties? You know, what scientists lost their jobs? I can't find examples where the right wing...
Okay, damn you for asking a logical question that none of the LDAM are ever going to pose.
The progress of science. Whereas you can look on the left and you see so many areas that are taboo to research.
Some research on genetically modified foods became taboo because of protests from the left. Tierney says that stifled research into what could have been a second green revolution to feed Africa. Also, Rachel Carson's silent spring and her baseless claim that DDT caused cancer in humans.
I had to read that when I was in high school.
Still?
No, I can't tell you. Elementary school? Yeah, I had to read it.
Taught in high schools today. But there's no mention of the millions killed by malaria because countries needlessly ban DDT. And scientists can't even talk about whether genes affect intelligence.
The federal government stopped funding IQ research decades ago.
Researchers who looked at it anyway, like Charles Murray, are screamed at on college campuses.
People who studied IQ needed bodyguards for their lectures. It's something that can't be discussed.
Likewise, researching gender differences has become taboo.
You can't talk about sexual differences between men and women. I mean, it's okay if they favor women. I mean, you can say that men are more likely to commit crimes, but you can't suggest anything that there might be some kind of sexual difference that might predispose men to be more interested in a topic.
Google fired engineer James Damore merely because he wrote a memo suggesting that sex differences might explain why more men work in tech.
Damore just pointed out very basic scientific research about differences between the sexes. And the people who, and the experts in this, as soon as he published that memo, said, yes, he basically got the science right.
But that didn't matter.
To even mention that there are these differences in the sexes was just taboo. You can't say that there are more men interested in sitting all day doing computer coding than women are.
It's not that women aren't doing well in life, says Tierney. Women get most college degrees and graduate degrees.
Women dominate virtually every extracurricular activity, but all the focus has been why aren't there more women physicists and mathematicians, and of course in the sports area too. And so there's this idea that they're being discriminated against there, when in fact the evidence really shows the reverse. There have been just enormous studies of who gets grants, who gets tenure, who gets interviews for jobs, and women get preference if anything.
The women would say,
dude, you're going to hell.
Men run most of society. You head the corporations, you make more money. It must be discrimination.
I mean, men are more aggressive, they're more risk-taking, the status matters more to them, making money matters more to them. Women aren't as interested in that. There's this enormous evidence.
You can't say that.
You can't say that.
I guess I won't be president of Harvard.
He says today's universities are dominated by leftists.
In the social sciences, Democrats outnumber Republicans by at least 8-1. In some fields like sociology, it's 44-1. Students are more likely to be taught in sociology by a Marxist than by a Republican. It's gotten worse and worse.
Perfect.
Once an academic department gets a majority of people who are on the left, they start hiring people like themselves, and pretty soon the whole department is that way. And they start to think that their opinions and that their interests are not only the norm, but the truth.
So they publish articles like this one saying conservatives have lower IQ and are more likely to be prejudiced.
Yeah.
Science shows conservatives are more closed-minded.
The problem with this is it's been done by all these liberal social scientists. They would ask people about left-wing groups like communists, and conservatives were more prejudiced. Finally, someone went out and started asking different kinds of questions. And when he asked liberals about things that mattered to them, like environmentalism or like Barack Obama, it turned out they were just as irrational and dogmatic as conservatives were.
One survey question asked, do you believe in the long run hard work usually brings a better life?
I mean, that seems obvious to anyone, right? But that was classified as a rationalization of inequality.
Another study asked if you agree that the Earth has plenty of natural resources if we just learn how to develop them.
That is conventional wisdom among people who study economics.
Ask those
But
questions?
that was classified in that study as a denial of environmental realities.
So think about that next time you hear about that conservative war on science.
When it comes to science, I mean, if anything, conservatives are more scientifically literate than liberals are.
Boy, you can't say that, though. You know, then we have to realize that there is such a thing as the global warming industrial complex, and that it pays. It pays. Frequently large dollars, grants, massive grants from the federal government and from elsewhere. But wait, while we're here, let's revisit libertarian John Stossel, whom I met and interviewed at the 2017 Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. He provides another, what I call a brain-bruising fact job. Strange thing, I observed when I was there, John Stossel and Michael Medved are like remarkably similar in terms of their being about 5'6" tall, if that, and they're about 125 pounds dripping wet. They are both profoundly dinky dudes, but Stossel's logic, his logic is absolutely brain glazing.
Among the hottest years recorded.
The hottest year on record.
Another hot year. Global warming. What will we do about that? Politicians from most every country promised to deal with it by signing something called the Paris Climate Agreement.
A historic climate agreement in Paris.
But when President Trump took office, he said,
the United States will withdraw.
What? We will withdraw? We alone?
Okay, don't think I don't have a story about that coming up at the end of this special report about what really is occurring because of the Paris Climate Accords that you probably don't know about because the leftists, they're not going to tell you.
President Trump isolated the United States with his reckless and indefensible decision.
My neighbors in New York agree with that. And so do most of the media.
A lot at stake, potentially, for the planet.
Really? I bet they don't even know what was in the agreement. I didn't.
Wait.
Paris Accord
until you
was
hear this.
Somewhere between a farce and a fraud.
Manhattan Institute senior fellow Orrin Cass is one of the few people who've actually read the Paris Agreement and also the commitment set in by every country.
You don't even have to mention greenhouse gases in your commitment if you don't want to. You send in any piece of paper you want. We're going to staple them all together, and we're going to call that the Paris Accord. Everyone sent in a piece of paper, and they stapled it together and held it up and said, this is amazing.
China has made a major commitment.
So what's in the commitments that every country made?
India has ratified the Paris Climate Accord, committing the world's fastest growing economy to limit carbon dioxide emissions.
What you find is they either pledged to do exactly what they were already going to do anyway, or pledged even less than that. China, for instance, said, we pledge to reach peak emissions by about 2030. Well, the United States government had already done a study to guess when Chinese emissions would peak, and their guess was about 2030.
Peak doesn't mean stop. It just means stop increasing.
That's right. So, in fact, China promised they will continue increasing their emissions for some time to come.
Yeah. And yet,
China was actually one of the better pledges. India made no pledge to limit their emissions at all. They pledged only to become more efficient, but they proposed to become efficient less quickly than they're already becoming more efficient. So their pledge was to slow down. You know, my favorite was Pakistan, whose pledge was to reach a peak at some point, after which to begin reducing emissions. And so you can staple those together and you can say we now have a global agreement, but what you have is an agreement to do nothing. And if anything, you've gone backwards because whereas in the past you could have criticized countries and said, hey, why aren't you doing anything? Now we have an agreement that says, in fact, we will applaud you for doing nothing.
We came together.
It's a global circle jerk. Hey, Barack, talk, dude.
Around the strong agreement the world needed.
Obviously, President Obama got a lot of political mileage out of that, but the climate didn't get much at all. The one country that showed up in Paris with a very costly, ambitious target was the United States.
Oh,
so
imagine
President Obama
that.
took all the zero commitments from everybody else, but threw in a really expensive one for us.
Super expensive. Obama pledged to reduce American emissions by a quarter. Of course, it's true that the United States produces twice as much greenhouse gas per person as China and India. So isn't it on us to do more?
Even if we zeroed out our emissions tomorrow, the future of climate change is still a question of what happens in China and India.
We're getting out.
When Trump said he was leaving the Paris Accord, he was trashed by politicians across the world.
I'm dismayed at the U.S. decision to pull out of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, Theresa May, you may not have a job tomorrow.
And Obama said, this administration joins a handful of nations that reject the future?
If the future is worthless climate agreements that everyone goes to Paris to talk about, then first of all, that's a very sad future, and it's one that we should be proud to reject.
The Earth is warming. Man may well be increasing that. But the solution isn't to waste billions by forcing emissions cuts here while other countries do nothing, while pretending to make cuts. Trump was right to repudiate this phony treaty. Most of us didn't even know how phony it was. But now we do.
Anybody remember Solyndra? Of course you don't, because it was a leftist environmental failure. We can't have reality injected into one of our unicorn purple sky scenarios. Here's an article, Why the Solyndra Mistake is Still Important to Remember. Almost exactly, now, 8 years ago, after solar panel startup Solyndra filed for bankruptcy, the ghost of the company has risen for seemingly the umpteenth time. And no, it wasn't from another awkward Republican presidential candidate. This time the haunting is in the form of a report from the Inspector General's office. Stand by. After more than 4+ years of investigation, it concluded that Solyndra officials used inaccurate information to mislead the Department of Energy in its application for a $535 million loan guarantee. That's your buckage, your dollars. The report also found that there were shortcomings in the DOE's process of managing and approving the loan guarantee to Solyndra. Imagine that. That's also the Obama administration deciding who will win and who will lose in terms of business. Solyndra, of course, is the once much-hyped solar panel startup that raised over $1 billion from private investors and lost $500 million of taxpayer funds in the form of a loan backed by the DOE when the company later went tits up. That's what we get when an administration, in that case, like I said, Obama 44, decides to pick the winners and losers in terms of corporations and topics. Your American tax dollars went into this huge enviro maw, this big pit, and ended up getting pissed and squandered away, never to be seen again or perhaps accounted for, more importantly, never to be accounted for again. Because the crux of the biscuit of that is, more than anything, the report highlights that a startup as high risk as Solyndra should not ever have been considered for such a large loan guarantee from the federal government. But Obama decided himself, as the anointed one, that he was going to piss away your tax dollars for something as ridiculous as that. So the LDAM would explain it this way. Hey, what's a few million or billion dollars anyway? The true measure should be this. Hey, we meant well. It made us feel better. Solyndra went bankrupt because its costs were far too high. Its only customers were paying for its panels at a discount, and the cost of solar panels in China were beginning to drop dramatically. So instead of finding customers willing to pay a premium for its new panels, its solar developer customers could head to China, imagine that, and buy cheap panels there. Another reason why maybe President Trump is focusing on China and tariffs. A wee bit of initial pain, I might suggest, but much less than the seppuku to be demanded later on the back end. Kind of like, say 2008. Hey, remember Too Big to Fail? If we'd simply let shite crash, things would have reconstructed in half the time. But no, friends pulled friend cards, and billions and billions of more American taxpayer dollars were squandered. Folks, you seeing kind of a thread here? But I digress. These days, let's cut literally to the chase. The electric car. The electric car is going to save us all, eliminate want and need. It's going to grind our bread. It's going to render good and just decisions in every part of our lives. It's going to yield equanimity. It's going to eliminate the 1%. It's going to solve most of our environmental problems and make everybody happy. If you're a moron, remember, electric cars will save us all. And remember what I said at the beginning of the report. This is an article, Electric Car Owners Are Shocked. New study confirms EVs are considerably worse for the climate than diesel cars. Now, after I said that, considerably worse for the climate than diesel cars, if I had a producer, you should have heard. But I don't have a producer, so that's not what you heard. The Brussels Times reports that a new German study exposes how electric vehicles, will hardly decrease CO2 emissions in Europe over the coming years, as the introduction of electric vehicles won't lead to a reduction in CO2 emissions from highway traffic. Oh, hell no. Oh, no, that's a load of rightist propaganda. But even back from like January of 2016.
Do electric cars really help the environment? President Obama thinks so. So does Leonardo DiCaprio and many others. The argument goes like this. Regular cars run on gasoline, a fossil fuel that pumps CO2 straight out of the tailpipe and into the atmosphere.
Oh, bad.
Electric cars run on electricity. They don't burn any gasoline at all. No gas, no CO2. In fact, electric cars are often advertised as creating zero emissions. But do they really? Let's take a closer look.
No, let's not.
First,
no.
There's the energy needed to produce the car.
No.
More than a third of the lifetime carbon dioxide emissions from an electric car comes from the energy used to make the car itself, especially the battery. The mining of lithium, for instance, is not a green activity. When an electric car rolls off the production line, it's already been responsible for more than 25,000 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions. The amount for making a conventional car, just 16,000 pounds. But that's not the end of the CO2 emissions, because while it's true that electric cars don't run on gasoline, they do run on electricity, which in the US is often produced by another fossil fuel, coal. As green venture capitalist Vinod Khosla likes to point out, electric cars are coal-powered cars. The most popular electric car, the Nissan Leaf, over a 90,000-mile lifetime will emit 31 metric tons of CO2 based on emissions from its production, its electricity consumption at average US fuel mix, and its ultimate scrapping.
No, I don't believe
A comparable Mercedes CDI A160 over a similar lifetime will emit just 3 tons more across its production, diesel consumption, and ultimate scrapping. The results are similar for a top-line Tesla, the king of electric cars. It emits about 44 tons, which is only 5 tons less than a similar Audi A7 Quattro. So throughout the full life of an electric car, it will emit just 3 to 5 tons less CO2. In Europe, on its European trading system, it currently costs $7 to cut 1 ton of CO2. So the entire climate benefit of an electric car is about $35. Yet the US federal government essentially provides electric car buyers with a subsidy of up to $7,500. Paying $7,500 for something you could get for $35 is a very poor deal. And that doesn't include the billions more in federal and state grants, loans, and tax write-offs that go directly to battery and electric car makers. The other main benefit from electric cars is supposed to be lower pollution.
Right.
But remember Vinod Khosla's observation. Electric cars are coal-powered cars. Yes, it might be powered by coal, proponents will say, but unlike the regular car, coal plant emissions are far away from city centers, where most people live, and where damage from air pollution is greatest.
Right.
However, new research in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that while gasoline cars pollute closer to home, coal-fired power actually pollutes more, a lot more. How much more? Well, the researchers estimate that if the US has 10% more gasoline cars in 2020, 870 more people will die each year from the additional air pollution. If the US has 10% more electric vehicles powered on the average US electricity mix, 1,617 more people will die every year from the extra pollution.
What?
Twice as many.
What?
But of course, electricity from renewables like solar and wind creates energy for electric cars without CO2.
Right. Now we're
the
talking.
perceived rapid ramp-up of these renewables make future electric cars much cleaner?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is mostly wishful thinking.
No.
Today, the US gets 14% of its electric power from renewables. In 25 years, Obama's Energy Information Administration estimates that number will have gone up just 3 percentage points to 17%.
What?
Meanwhile, those fossil fuels that generate 65% of US electricity today will still generate about 64% of it in 2040. While electric car owners may cruise around feeling virtuous, the reality is that the electric car cuts almost no CO2, costs taxpayers a fortune, and surprisingly generates more air pollution than traditional gasoline cars. I'm Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus Center.
So this is a Euro nerd splaying us with facts and figures. Damn him! But wait, there's more. There's a lot more. According to the study directed by Christoph Buchal of the University of Cologne, Germany, published by the IFO Institute in Munich last week, electric vehicles have significantly higher CO2 emission than diesel cars. That's due to the significant amount of energy used in the mining and processing of lithium, a rather rare element, cobalt, a rather rare element, and manganese, a rather rare element, which are critical raw materials for the production of electric car batteries because they're not made of, well, they're almost made of unobtainium, but people want them to be made of, I don't know, like unicorn horns or something like that. So let's get specific. What's wrong with the batteries and why are they problematic? I mean, really, every form of electric transportation requires batteries, except for trains hooked up continuously to like electrical lines overhead, right? They're just batteries. A battery pack for a Tesla Model 3 pollutes the climate with 11 to 15 tons of CO2. Each battery pack has a lifespan of about 10 years and a total mileage of about 94,000 miles, which would mean 73 to 98 grams of CO2 per kilometer, 116 to 156 grams of CO2 per mile, Buchel said. Add to this the CO2 emissions of the electricity from power plants that power such vehicles, and the actual Tesla emissions could be between 156 to 180 grams of CO2 per kilometer, 249 and 289 grams of CO2 per mile. Now, please remember, this is no Bill Nye the Science Guy telling you this. Hey, hang on. More on Bill Nye in a bit, and as if you hadn't gotten it already, no, we're not going to have any more commercials or anything like that. It's the special report all the way to the end. Like I said, that science nerd in Europe, hey, is the center of all things green. German researchers criticize the fact that EU legislation classifies electric cars as zero-emissions cars. They call it a deception because electric cars like the Model 3, with all the factors included, produce more emissions than diesel vehicles by Mercedes. They further write that the EU target of 59 grams of CO2 per kilometer by 2030 is technically unrealistic. Oh, that's the cat turd in the punch bowls. Why not? California wants 5 million all-electric cars by 2030 and hundreds of thousands of charging stations to keep them running. Question, who's going to pay for all that? Massive infrastructure refit. Only one person. You are. Me. You. And you think if you're not going to be affected by this in some other state? Who's the guy that goes, heh heh? Yeah, you are. In Brown's 16th and his last State of the State speech as governor, he was governor, by the way, during the 1970s and the 1980s, and had like at least 3 terms until Newsom. He outlined an ambitious target that makes previous goals seem like child's play. That said, the state was already struggling to meet its goal of 1.5 million electric vehicles by 2025, due, oddly enough, to the significant lack of charging infrastructure. Who could have seen that coming? Nobody. California currently has about 350,000 electric cars, the most in the nation, okay. But the big problem with scaling all that up so fast is finding a place for that many EVs, electric vehicles, to charge. Now, California has about 12,000 charging stations. That's fairly good compared to the rest of the country, but it is like woefully inadequate for the bump that Jerry Brown wanted. That's why his executive order that calls for a $2.5 billion investment for a surge in building chargers with a goal of 250,000 around the state by 2025. Only on your money. Not going to be his money, going to be your money. And technological reality keeps getting in the way of all these purple-skied visions. But the other problem is one of timing. There are about 8,500 gas stations in California, and trips to these stations usually pretty quick. It doesn't take long to top off your tank, and if there are, some form of persistent lines, drivers start to get a little bit annoyed. Current technology means that it's going to take longer to charge cars than fill them up with gas, even in perfect conditions. With a single charger connected to a 240-volt outlet, getting a full Tesla charge takes about, wait for it, 9 hours to charge all the way. While studies have shown that people only drive an average of about 29 miles a day, people don't buy cars because they want to fit into statistical averages. Surveys show that people mostly have passion in the mind of the buyer and that it affects car purchases. Of course it does. They don't want to have to wait a long time to drive their cars, which is why PG&E wants to spend some money on fast charging station, which can refuel EVs in about 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, you got time in your day to fill up your car, charge it for 20 to 30 minutes, probably every day. If you forget for whatever reason that you didn't charge it at home, or if you drove somewhere a little bit extra. Brown's executive order would up the number of fast chargers from the current 1,500 to about 10,000. Really, when you think about it, that's cat piss. But again, I got to remind you, regular charging stations or fast charging stations, who's going to pay for those? You are. Me. Your taxes are simply going to go up. Again, remember the California quotient. What stupid kind of crap happens here in California eventually bleeds over to your state as well. So if you think if you're walking away or stepping away from this, you're not. Okay, now Governor Brown is gone. Governor Newsom has not and will not roll back those goals. He's just going to double down. And he is, with more taxes and more. And more. California now wants to eliminate the diesel engine wholesale from the entire state. Here's an article. Diesel trucks would be nearly eliminated in California under a proposed law. A proposed law that would phase out diesel trucks in California was introduced in an ongoing effort by state legislators to control pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. But it will likely face major opposition from trucking companies. Imagine that. And other businesses that transport products in big rigs. But that ain't all. I'll get to that in a bit. The bill by State Senator Nancy Skinner, Democrat of Berkeley, would direct the California Air Resources Board, CARB, to require a 40% reduction in diesel emissions by 2030 and an 80% reduction by 2050, cuts that experts say would not be possible without a major overhaul of the trucking industry. And or eliminate the diesel engine altogether. Don't you get me? That's the point. Make no mistake. That's what California wants. They want to be the vanguard of the what I call the religious left. No matter the facts, the history, the logic, rationality, proportion, common sense, context, intent, or cost, budgetarily or societally. Your wallet can go to hell. That money belongs to California, you moron, not you. In response, trucks move this world. That's nonsense to me, says Earl, a heavy equipment hauler who declined to give his last name, as he stood next to his idling rig at the North Bay Truck Center in Fairfield. What are they going to use, electric? That's not going to work. Jim Buell, general manager of the North Bay Truck Center, said that compared with gas engines, diesel engines are much more powerful, true. Last longer, true. They can last 800,000 miles, a gas engine about 200,000 miles, and generally get about 30% better fuel economy. But wait, it gets better. The proposed law would join other recent moves designed to help the state meet its goal to cut carbon emissions to 1990 levels. Former Governor Jerry Brown signed legislation last year requiring all of California's electricity to be from clean sources such as solar, wind, and hydropower by 2045. There are some questions. What happens on a cloudy day or a week on solar? What happens when there is no wind on bladed big bird killing turbines? And by the way, I'm sure you would love to have a 200-foot tall, 5-bladed turbine hovering over your neighborhood anyway. Wouldn't that be cool? Think of the props that you'd get, the preening that you could do to all your favorite leftist friends. Hey, and hydropower. How do you get hydropower? That's right, with rivers and reservoirs and dams, because in its simplest form, you need a gravity-fed and directed penstock to turn the impellers. California hasn't built an actual dam in decades. The environmentalists here in California won't let that occur. And California certainly won't back up rivers or creeks to create reservoirs for the very same reason. And this important factor, did we forget that California has some rather and has a rather serious continuous series of infamous droughts? It doesn't matter if these forms are viable or not. California is simply decreeing them into existence, no matter, literally, the cost. The San Francisco Muni Transportation Agency recently committed to replacing its diesel and gas-powered buses with an all-electric transit fleet by 2035. Okay, pie in the sky. Business would essentially stop without some type of diesel fuel that can be burned, Howard said. You're talking, and this is true, you're talking tractors, forklifts, cranes, and there's more. I just don't see diesel going away. That fuel is 200 years old, and it's not going to be replaced in 30 years. Then there's this. Skinner's proposal falls in line with the California Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006, which designated the State Air Resources Board as the agency that would monitor and regulate emissions of greenhouse gases. CARB already requires truck owners to install diesel exhaust retrofits that capture pollutants and replace engines older than the 2010 model year by 2022. Stop. It's the California religious left way. It's their way. Make things painful. Who's going to pay for these diesel engine upfits on engines? Right. Either the independent trucker is going to do it, or the corporation, or the individual owners of marine engines. You got a charter boat, runs on a diesel engine. My former brother had to replace one of those. If you watch Deadliest Catch, you already know those engines, if they replace one, and they're not that huge, they can cost up to $100,000 to replace or more. Hey, that's chump change. Here's some hard reality. Business would essentially stop without some type of a diesel engine fuel that can be burned, Howard said. I just don't see this happening. And this point, too. Think of some means of conveyance in the transportation chain that isn't diesel powered. If you don't know this, you know it now. Ships are diesel electric powered. Huge ships, massive ships, tanker ships, container ships, the ships you knock around on cruises with. Ever stand at the back of the ship as it's cruising along and you can kind of smell, why does my ship smell like diesel fuel? That's weird. Does that mean California is no longer going to allow those ships to dock, bringing the goods you require to the state? What are they going to do about that? What next in the transportation chain? The diesel-electric locomotives who bring those goods to a central distribution hub. You think Union Pacific or BNSF or CSX or Norfolk Southern or Canadian National are going to just wave wands and magically change to unicorn-powered locomotives because California decrees it so. Then big trucks, then smaller trucks in the transportation chain. You are talking about a paradigm shift that affects every facet of the transport chain. Changed overnight. NGH, not gonna happen. Go back to my first story, and then you still have the same problems. The battery. The reality is, in addition to the CO2 emissions generated in mining the raw materials for the production of electric vehicles, all EU countries generate significant CO2 emissions from charging the vehicle's batteries using dirty power plants. For true emissions reductions, researchers concluded the study by saying methane-powered gasoline engines or hydrogen motors could cut CO2 emissions by a third and possibly eliminate the need for diesel engines. Methane technology is ideal for the transition from natural gas vehicles with conventional engines to engines that will one day run on methane from CO2-free energy sources. That being the case, the German federal government should treat all technologies equally and promote hydrogen and methane solutions as well. This is from WUWT.com. Tesla car battery production releases as much CO2 as 8 years of gasoline driving. Huge hopes have been tied to electric cars as the solution to automotive CO2 climate problems, but it turns out the electric car batteries are eco-villains in the production process of creating them. Several tons of carbon dioxide have been emitted even before the batteries leave the factory. Damned facts. Even before buying the car, emissions occurred, corresponding to approximately 5.3 tons and 7.5 tons of carbon dioxide. The numbers can be difficult to relate to. Another conclusion of the study is about half the emissions arising from the production of raw materials and half the production of the battery factory. The mining accounts for only a small portion, between 10 to 20%. Even Politico.com is asking this question. Are electric cars worse for the environment? Crunch the numbers and it looks like all those subsidies might be counterproductive. If you believe the headlines, traditional automobiles are speeding towards a dead end. All those V8s, V6s, and turbocharged vehicles we've grown to love will soon be replaced by squadrons of clean, whisper-quiet, all-electric vehicles. And if you believe the headlines, the environment will be much better off. However, policymakers at every level have done their part to push electric vehicles by creating a tank full of subsidies. Thanks to laws signed by George Bush and Barack the One, electric vehicle buyers can feast on federal tax credits of up to $7,500 that reduce the initial purchase cost of their vehicle. Not to be outdone, many states also dangle their own mix of goodies for electric vehicle buyers, including purchase rebates as large as $5,000, additional rebates for vehicle chargers, and free use of public charging stations, which are only free because they're subsidized by ratepayers and taxpayers like you and me. Some states even give electric vehicles preferential access to the carpool lanes. But wait. Hey, if you think you were special because you're driving an electric car, stop. No longer no free ride in Illinois anymore. Illinois might start charging $1,000 per year to own an electric vehicle. Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense. Hey, Whiskey Dale, good to see you. Why is Illinois going to start charging $1,000 a year to own an electric car? A proposed hike in Illinois annual registration fee for electric vehicles from $17.50 to $1,000 is being called unfair by current EV owners and a sales disincentive by manufacturers. Do you think? Just as the new technology is beginning to gain broader traction. It's outrageous, said Nicoletta Scarlatos, 56 of Chicago, who bought a Tesla Model S 5 years ago. I thought Illinois was progressive and would want to encourage EV ownership, aimed at raising money to make overdue road improvements across Illinois. The proposed legislation would also more than double the state's gas tax to 44 cents a gallon and raise the registration fee for standard vehicles to $148 from $98, among other elements. But the kicker is a nearly 60-fold increase in the electric vehicle registration fee, causing just a wee bit of sticker shock across a nascent segment of the auto industry, which has been dependent on government incentives to get people into electric cars. But I digress. Let's continue. What was found is that widespread adoption of electric vehicles nationwide will likely increase air pollution compared with new internal combustion vehicles. You read that right. More electric cars and trucks will mean more pollution. Wow. Doesn't that sound counterintuitive? After all, won't replacing a 30-year-old smoke-belching Oldsmobile, which isn't even made anymore, with a new electric vehicle, won't that reduce air pollution? Yeah, of course. But that's also where many electric vehicle proponents' arguments run off the road. They fail to consider just how clean and efficient new internal combustion vehicles are. The appropriate comparison for evaluating the benefits of all those electric vehicle subsidies and mandates isn't the difference between an electric vehicle and an old gas guzzler. It's the difference between an electric car and a new gas car. And new internal combustion engines are really clean. Today's vehicles emit only about 1% of the pollution they did in the 1960s. And new innovations continue to improve those engines' efficiency and cleanliness. Wait a minute. I got a question for you. Why don't we ever hear these issues addressed by the religious left? And as for that electric car, the energy doesn't come from nowhere. Cars are charged from the nation's electric grid, which means they're only as clean as America's mix of power sources. Well, we already talked about that. Based on that forecast, if the EIA's projected number of electric vehicles were replaced with new internal combustion vehicles, air pollution would actually decrease. And this holds true even if you include the emissions from oil refineries that manufacture gasoline. Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. That can't be true. What about California? As for states like California with stringent mandates to use more renewable energy for their power grid, California, also have the highest electric rates in the continental U.S., 50% higher than the U.S. average. And electric rates in those states just keep increasing. So it's a cleaner power mix, but makes recharging your car more expensive. The higher the electric rate, the lower the incentive for a new car buyer to purchase an electric vehicle. Well, unless they mandate it by the state. Stop. Got to ask yourself sensible questions, right? When was the last time California built an electrical power station? It was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Further, I want to point out California is closing older power plants like the giant La Paloma plant. Worse, California right now, did you know that it imports 33% of its electricity supply from neighboring states? With about 65% of that coming from the Southwest and about 35% coming from the Northwest. It gets better. High costs and, of course, less reliability. California leads the nation with nearly 470 power outages a year as, say, a lot of people in chat are from Texas. Well, let's use Texas as an example. Compared to Texas, which has 160 outages a year, but Texas produces 125% more electricity. It's no surprise that California power rates are 45% above the U.S. average. So if electric vehicle subsidies don't help the environment, what or who do they help? Most electric vehicle buyers are far wealthier than average Americans. A nationwide survey in 2017 found that 56% had household incomes of at least $100,000, and 17% had household incomes of at least $200. In 2016, median household income for the U.S. as a whole was less than $58,000. So wouldn't it be fair to say that the subsidies disproportionately benefit the wealthy at the expense of the poor, who cannot afford to buy even subsidized electric vehicles or live in their own homes to take advantage of residential chargers or solar panels? 1%. This benefits the rich. Well, I thought leftists hate the rich. They want to eat the rich. Not only that, the wires and charging stations needed to charge all those electric vehicles are going to be paid for by ratepayers, taxpayers, further raising electric rates. And as more wealthy customers install solar panels to charge their electric vehicles, the costs to provide them backup power will fall on those who cannot afford to do so. So in effect, it's like this. The wealthy owners of electric vehicles will enjoy the benefits of their clean little silent cars zipping around, while passing on many of the costs of keeping their vehicles on the road to everybody else, especially the poor. Hey, good times, huh, leftists? Religious leftists? Good times. Screw the poor, California says. They can go crap in the streets for all it cares. Oh, wait, they're already doing that. What you can conclude if you're actually using your head is this. What if this entire electric car thing, like I said at the beginning, what if this entire electric car thing is simply not feasible? It's a raper of the environment and, moreover, possibly one of the biggest scams ever created by, I don't know, Elon Musk and others of the religious left. As I said at the beginning, what if everything you knew was wrong and subsequently everything you wanted to do built off of that false premise or assumption was wrong as well? That's kind of similar to the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. And then there's the, God, I love this when researching this. There is the false promise of alternative energy in the first place. This is from Forbes. Unreliable nature of solar and wind makes electricity more expensive, new study finds. Huh, didn't see that coming. Solar panels and wind turbines are making electricity significantly more expensive, a major new study by a team of economists from the University of Chicago finds. Renewable Portfolio Standards, RPS, significantly increase average retail electricity prices, with prices increasing by 11%, 7 years after the policy's passage into law, and 17% 12 years afterwards, the economists write. The study, which is yet to go through peer review, was done by Michael Greenstone, Richard McDowell, and Ishan Nath. It compares states with and without RPS. It did so using the economists', well, what they call, is the most comprehensive state-level data set ever compiled, which covered 1990 to 2015. The cost to consumers has been staggeringly high. All in all, 7 years after passage, consumers in the 29 states had paid $125.2 billion more for the electricity than they would have in the absence of the policy, they write. Look at Solyndra. Leftist Democrats and the American media maggots and the religious left, quite bluntly, don't give a shit about the budgetary or societal costs. They have decreed it so. You simply need to STFU and open your wallets some more. Solar and wind require that natural gas plants, hydroelectric dams, batteries, or some other form of reliable power be ready at a moment's notice to start churning out electricity when the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining. And unreliability requires solar and or wind-heavy places like Germany, California, and Denmark. Check this out. Unreliability requires solar and or wind-heavy places like Germany, California, and Denmark to pay neighboring nations or states to take their solar and wind energy when they're producing too much of it. What? Pay to provide electricity to others. I thought they were supposed to pay us. Previous studies were misleading, the economists say, because they didn't incorporate three key costs, which are the unreliability of renewables, imagine that, the large amount of land they require, that's the truth, and the displacement of cheaper baseload energy sources like nuclear plants. The higher cost of electricity reflects the costs that renewables impose on the generation system, the economists note, including those associated with their intermittency, meaning their unreliability, higher transmission costs, and any stranded asset costs assigned to ratepayers, meaning you and me, the American taxpayer. We're always going to take it up the bum. But are renewables cost-effective climate policy? They are not. The economists write that the cost per metric ton of CO2 abated exceeds $130 in all specifications and ranges up to $460, making it at least several times larger than conventional estimates of the social cost of carbon. Solyndra, anyone, Bueller. Okay, and remember earlier I referred to this dude, Bill Nye, the science guy. What about Bill Nye, the religious leftist who outs himself with anger, lies, and, well, outright faith, not facts? Okay, first, this is he with Tucker Carlson.
We're coming to you live from outside the U.S. Capitol building, where President Trump will address a joint session of Congress in fewer than 24 hours. You may hear construction noise behind us during the show. That's because there is construction going on. There always is in Washington, the richest city in America. We want to thank you for that, for sending your tax dollars here. It's built a pretty nice place. Well, Bill Nye the Science Guy is now aspiring to a new title, Bill Nye the Psychoanalyst Guy. During a Facebook Live event with Senator Bernie Sanders today, the mechanical engineer and TV personality said, skeptics of global warming suffer from the psychological delusion of cognitive dissonance.
Okay, stop right here just for a second. I have to tell you guys this. We are going to go into overtime.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It's a slight bump up from last year when he was open to the idea of imprisoning skeptics, global warming, as war criminals. Is that the choice? Bellevue or Nuremberg? Perfect. Bill Nye joins us now. Bill, it's great to see you. That doesn't sound like science to me, Bill Nye the Science Guy. That sounds like something very different.
So cognitive dissonance is not a delusion. It's a feature. It's human nature. So we in the science community are looking for an explanation why climate change deniers, or extreme skeptics, do not accept the overwhelming scientific evidence for climate change. And the most reasonable explanation is you have a worldview, and then you have evidence, and the evidence disagrees with your worldview, so you deny the evidence. And then along with that, you deny the authorities that are providing the evidence. Now,
right, that's just what leftists are doing. Thanks, Bill, for explaining that about how you and other religious leftists address the issue. Thanks. I knew that needed explaining, and I appreciate it.
You have a better hypothesis for why climate deniers deny the overwhelming scientific evidence. Bring it on. It's not a delusion. It's just like the fox and the grapes.
Well,
he can't reach the grapes, so he says the grapes are no good.
Look, people do come to every debate with preconceptions, and you're right about that, of course. But the essence of science is extreme skepticism. We always ought to be asking ourselves, is my hypothesis true?
I'm a member of both skeptic organizations, Mr. Carlson, and this is climate change denial.
No, he's not.
The evidence is overwhelming. Jesus. Don't get me wrong. I love you as a person more than life itself, but the evidence for climate change is overwhelming. So we are looking for an explanation of why you guys are having so much trouble with it.
So slow down. Before the name calling begins, and before you try to end the conversation, let's start it by asking what exactly you mean. Now, I think most people are open to the idea that the climate is changing. It has always changed, by the way, as you know.
It's the rate, Mr. Carlson. It's the rate that's such a concern.
The core question, from what I can tell, is why the change? Is it part of the endless cycle of climate change, or is human activity causing it? That seems to be the debate to me, and it seems an open question, not a settled question, to what degree human activity is causing that. Is that not an open question?
It's not an open question. It's a settled question. Human activity is causing climate change.
To what degree?
To a degree that it's a very serious problem in the next few decades.
Wait, stop. Wait, no, you said it's a settled point, and I'm asking a very precise question.
It's a settled point.
Okay, then if you'll elucidate it for me, I'd be grateful. To what degree is climate change caused by human activity? Is 100% of climate change is caused by human activity? Is it 74.3%? It's settled science. Please tell us to what degree human activity is responsible.
So the word degree is a word that you chose. But the speed that climate change is happening is caused by humans. Instead of happening on timescales of millions of years, or let's say 15,000 years, it's happening on a timescale of decades and now years. Now, I offered...
Wait, but hold on. But to what extent is human activity responsible for speeding that up? I mean, please be more precise.
If that's the number you want. Humans are causing it to happen catastrophically fast.
Okay, so at what rate would it have changed without human activity? And you look annoyed that I'm asking these questions, but they're very basic questions. They're not denial.
So basically, the cycles of climate change, the last ice age we had was tens of thousands of years ago.
Wait. People are saying that the ice age didn't stop until the 1800s. Scientists are already contradicting that information. Plus, I can show you studies. Here's the dealio. For every study that you show me saying that the Earth is about to fall apart, I can show you a study saying the exact opposite, which is a massive bullshit alert on this guy. That's why you look at everything that's out there. That's what I did for this program. That's what I did for this show. So it's wrong. Anthropogenic, global warming, we don't have the answers.
So bear in mind that in ancient dinosaur days, there was more carbon dioxide. The world was warmer than it is now. There was an inland sea in what is now Wyoming. And I understand you have a member of Congress from Colorado, used to be underwater. And you go to Dinosaur National Mine, you can see it. Okay.
Yes.
But that's millions of years ago. The problem is
you just said it was tens of thousands.
That was the Ice Age. The rate.
Okay.
The rate is the problem. Now, here's the thing. Half the people in the world live on sea coasts. As we get the ocean a little bit warmer, the ocean's going to expand, and people live on the sea coast are going to be displaced.
But you're not answering my question.
Okay, stop with the nonsense. Even in worst-case scenarios, people have indicated that the ocean may rise an inch. Okay, so an inch in the ocean rise, given that that's correct, and I'm not ceding that point, an inch is going to affect what?
What will happen if this continues? And I'm asking you a simple question. Hold on. I'm asking you a simple question about the rate of climate change.
So
you said that it would be happening, but that rate has accelerated because of human activity. And I'm asking you very simply.
The word accelerated is an understatement. Okay, it's happening extraordinarily
I'm asking you a simple
fast.
question, and because the science is settled, I hope you can answer it in simple terms, which is, without human activity, how long would it have taken for us to reach this level of warmth in our climate?
It's not clear that it would have happened. In other words, humans have changed the climate so drastically that we have almost certainly avoided another ice age. There would have been another ice age. Ain't gonna happen because of you and me. So
really, I have scientists and reports that I gathered for this show that say that an ice age is coming and that this guy is constructed of crap.
The sooner we get to work on this problem,
when would it have happened?
When would the next ice age have happened?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Without human activity, what would the process look? Here's the point that I hope our viewers can understand. I'm not in any way denying that the climate is changing. I'm utterly open to the possibility.
The climate always changes. Hello, let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor.
That the change is caused by man's activity. I'm merely calling into question your claim that all of this is settled, that that we know precisely what is happening and why, and that anyone who asks pointed questions about it is a denier and ought to be imprisoned or
apostate, hypocrite, apostate, denier.
Shouted off the stage.
No, that was your word. That's you guys. That's not my.
You guys.
That's not my claim, and I really.
Would you like me to read your quote? That people who disagree with you ought to potentially go to jail. You said that.
Okay.
And I'm just saying, isn't
Oh no, I didn't say that.
skepticism
exactly what I
baked
said.
in?
That's why God created the internet, and I have shows like this.
Carlson, we can talk about that shortly, but
is it appropriate to jail the guys from Enron? Was it appropriate to jail the people of the cigarette industry?
Look, don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Promised it wasn't addictive, etc.
Okay.
Look, my only point is, shouldn't we be encouraging people to ask honest questions, which I am doing, and you don't seem
No, the answer as far as he's concerned is, if you ask that question, the answer is no.
to have the answers to those questions.
Okay, I got to disagree with you. I claim I do have the answers.
Okay.
Okay. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Why aren't you concerned about it? Don't you have 4 children? Why aren't you concerned
I am
about
concerned.
climate
That's
change?
why I'm having you on. Look, you don't reach correct conclusions in science or politics or any other field unless you can ask honest answers without being shouted
I
down
don't
by
think you
people
meant
like
ask,
you.
But I know what you mean. So
no, I do
what
mean
answer
ask.
do you want
I do
now?
mean I want to know what would happen without
the
human
next
activity.
ice
The
age would
climate
have been.
change. No, it's a simple question. The climate is always changing. You've conceded that.
Okay, do you see what Tucker Carlson's doing here? He's trying to trap him, and that's pretty obvious, and the guy is having none of it. Look, if you can't predict with some certain amount of authority when the next ice age would have come, absent anthropogenic global warming, why is it if you can't answer those questions, we should believe the specious bullshit that you're trying to lay across us right now? Why?
You're saying that human activity has increased the speed.
Yeah.
Increases the speed of that change. And my point is, what would the climate look like right now without human activity?
At what point would it have warmed or cooled?
He doesn't know.
Britain would not,
have changed during that period.
He can't say.
Britain would not be very well suited to growing grapes as it is today. French winemakers would not be buying land to the north as they are now. People who plan to run ski resorts would still be able to do it in Europe. And so the climate change and the parasites.
You're using the language of politics. Look, you're not a scientist. As you know, you're a popularizer.
I'm
and
using the language
and that's fine.
of economics.
But
so
I'm just saying,
you
look,
asked what it would
to the
be
extent
like
that you prevent people,
okay,
if you prevent people from having an honest conversation, you're doing a grave disservice to science. Don't you think that?
So you asked how long it would be before, what the climate would be like if humans weren't involved right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So
at what point would it have changed? And I'm just saying, you don't actually know because it's unknowable.
So
why aren't you open
it takes
to
you
questions?
to interrupt me, okay? It takes you quite a bit less than 6 seconds. So the climate would be like it was in 1750.
Oh, that was science. Oh, Bill Nye held up a calculator. That proves Bill Nye is the science damn guy. Impressive.
And economics would be that you could not grow wine-worthy grapes in Britain as you can today because the climate is changing. The use of pesticides in the Midwest would not be increasing because the parasites are showing up sooner or the pests are showing up sooner and hanging around longer.
I think that's probably all true,
Wyoming would not be overwhelmed by pine bark beetles as it is.
Right.
Because of climate change. That's how
so
the
much
world
of this
would be
you
different
don't
if it
know.
weren't for humans.
You pretend that you know, but you don't know, and you bully people who ask you questions.
I really have to disagree with you. I spent a lot of time with this topic.
I'm open-minded. You are not, and we're out of time, unfortunately.
So,
thank you for joining us.
You guys are the mainstream media, and I can tell you why they're leaks. Because the president has created 2 factions in his administration. They don't like each other, so they leak. It's not from the outside, it's from the inside. Carry on, Mr. Carlson. I'm sure we will cross paths again.
That's a very ominous thing to say.
What?
I don't know what it means, but come back anytime.
What the hell did that mean? Yeah, Bill Nye the Science Guy. Let's get into Bill Nye, the obsequious, foul-mouthed, potty-mouthed dude on a lovely little rant. Yeah, what a science guy he is, designed just for kids.
I'm happy to say that Bill Nye has actually agreed to help drive the urgency home at this point by actually doing one of his enjoyable, light-hearted demonstrations. So, Bill, please, do you have a fun experiment for us?
Does he ever?
Here, I've got an experiment for you. Safety glasses on. By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it?
Crisis.
Safety glasses off, motherfuckers.
Crisis. Remember that word, crisis, because he who controls the vocabulary controls the horizontal. Controls the vertical. Earth Day, here's an article. Earth Day, not a single environmental prediction of the last 50 years has come true. We should be thankful that the gloom and doom predictions made throughout the past several decades haven't come true. Fear-mongering about explosive population growth, food crises, and the imminent depletion of natural resources have been a staple of Earth Day events since 1970. Stop. Anybody besides me buy that stupid book or was told that they had to buy that stupid book by Dr. Paul Ehrlich called The Population Bomb. Everybody was going to be like that Star Trek episode where the Star Trek crew members are standing in the room and they're looking through these windows of it looks like a crowd of herring all packed together. That was Dr. Paul Ehrlich, and that was your fate. That was your future. By the year 2000, if present trends continue, we will be using up crude oil at such a rate that there won't be any more crude oil, ecologist Kenneth Watt warned around the time of the first Earth Day event. You'll drive up to the pump and you'll say, "Fill her up, buddy," and he'll say, "I am very sorry, there isn't any." Watt also warned of global cooling and nitrogen buildup, rendering all the planet's land unusable. This is from naturalnews.com. And remember I said, hey, for every scientist, blah, blah, there's another scientist on the opposite side, blah, blah. This is the article. Over 30,000 scientists say catastrophic man-made global warming is a complete hoax and science lie. The Obama White House assertion that 97% of scientists agree that global warming is real has been completely debunked. Several independently researched examinations of the literature used to support the 97% statement found that the conclusions were, imagine that, cherry-picked and misleading. Didn't see that one coming. More objective surveys have revealed that there is a far greater diversity of opinion among scientists than the global warming crowd would like you to believe. Imagine that. From a 2008 survey by two German scientists, Dennis Bray and Hans von Storch, found that a significant number of scientists were skeptical of the ability of existing global climate models to accurately predict global temperatures, precipitation, sea level changes, or extreme weather events, even over a decade. They were far more skeptical as the time horizon increased. Wow. BZ says, that seems kind of intuitive to me. Doesn't it seem kind of intuitive to you? Simultaneously, globalists want to see the U.S. completely boned, while the truth is that the other nations couldn't care less about the environment. It's all talk. Remember the Paris Accords? Remember I referred to that earlier in the show? There's a reason that President Trump wanted no damn part of this. Here's an article. U.S. emissions grow. U.S. reduces emissions while Paris Party's emissions grow. More than 190 nations signed the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. Those nations pledged to cut or cap their greenhouse gas emissions, primarily carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels, to prevent global average temperatures from rising 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. In truth, the agreement was a fraud from the start. All style, no substance. To stop temperatures from rising by the required amount would necessitate reducing global greenhouse gas emissions by 70% by 2050. Furthermore, countries would have become fully carbon neutral by 2100, yet the plan submitted by the nearly 200 countries would result in less than half the greenhouse gas cuts required to prevent the 2-degree temperature rise. And the government negotiators, they knew this all along. Now, assuming for the sake of argument that the Paris climate negotiators truly thought that the Earth is threatened by catastrophic anthropogenic climate change, it's fair to ask whether the countries involved in the agreement are making the reductions necessary to really prevent that supposed planetary doom. Are they walking the walk, or are they just talking the talk? The answer is the latter. For instance, China's carbon dioxide emissions rose at the fastest rate in 7 years during the first quarter of 2018, according to Greenpeace. China is the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitter, and its government data show the country's carbon dioxide emissions were 4% higher in the first quarter of 2018 than at the same time in 2017. If they remain 4% higher than 2017 throughout the year, it's going to mark the largest single growth in China's emissions since 2011. It's a great article. It's on my blog. You can read the rest of their article. It also talks about the EU, talks about Asia, talks about India, and those countries being world-class despoilers of the environment. But you don't read about any of that, do you? The religious left wants to ensure that you never hear those things. If you want to really find out what's going on regarding a given issue, there's a phrase applicable here called, and you'll recognize it immediately, follow the money. From nationalreview.com, global warming, follow the money. it isn't the fossil fuel companies that are polluting climate science. Citing documents uncovered by the radical environmental group Greenpeace, a group of media outlets, including the New York Times and the Boston Globe, have attacked global warming skeptic Hawk Soon for allegedly hiding $1.2 million in contributions from fossil fuel companies. Nah. The articles were the latest in an ongoing campaign by Greens and their media allies to discredit opponents of the warming agenda. But in allying themselves closely with activist groups with which they share ideological goals, reporters have fundamentally misled readers on the facts of global warming funding. In truth, the overwhelming majority of climate research funding comes from the federal government and left-wing foundations. And while the energy industry funds both sides of the climate debate, the government foundation monies go only towards research that advances the warming regulatory agenda. With a clear public policy outcome in mind, the government foundation gravy train is a much greater threat to scientific integrity. Why I call it the global warming industrial complex. Indeed, experts in the research community say that it is much more difficult for some of the top climate scientists, like that guy Soon, Roger Pielke Jr., the Cato Institute's Patrick Michaels, MIT's now retired Richard Lindzen, to get funding for their work because they do not embrace the global warming fear-mongering favored by the government-funded climate establishment. Despite claims that they are watchdogs of the establishment, media outlets such as The Times have ignored the government's oversized role in directing research, and they have ignored millions in contributions from left-wing foundations, contributions that, like government grants, seek to tip the scales to one side of the debate. I wonder what side that would be. Last summer, a minority staff report from the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works gave details on a billionaires club, a shadowy network of charitable foundations that distribute billions with a B to advance climate alarmism. Shadowy nonprofits such as the Energy Foundation and the Tides Foundation distributed billions with a B to far-left green groups such as the Natural Resources Defense Council, which in turn sends staff to the EPA, who then direct federal grants back to the same green groups. See how it's cyclical and it's incestuous. It is incestuous. It is opaque. And major media ignored the report. Imagine that. Then there's an article from thestream.org. There's big money in global warming alarmism. A sociologist with no training in the physical sciences is puzzled why most Americans think the world is not doomed by global warming. So flummoxed is Yale's Justin Farrell that he decided to study the question in the most scientific way possible. And he managed to publish his results, corporate funding and ideological polarization about climate change, in the prestigious Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. What do you think his conclusions were? Perhaps that 30 years of failed temperature predictions boosted American skepticism? Or that the obvious eagerness of politicians to leverage exaggerated fears have left many skittish? Or maybe it's the dearth of severe storms, despite the many promises that floods and droughts would drown and parch us all. No, none of that. Farrell discovered that private groups spent their own money to say that things were not as bad as alarmists claimed. He told the Washington Post that these contrarian efforts have been so effective for the fact that they have made it difficult for ordinary Americans to even know who to trust. Indeed, I myself, a climate scientist, no longer trust anything non-scientists like Farrell tell me about global warming, which he incorrectly calls climate change. So, yeah, sure, I trust Bill Nye the Science Guy. Come on! He's a science guy! He tells you that himself. Farrell's right about one thing. Global warming alarmism is big business. On one side, you have Greenpeace, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund, Environmental Defense Fund, the Climate Project, and dozens upon dozens of other non-governmental organizations or NGOs who solicit hundreds of millions of dollars from private donors and from government, who in turn award lucrative grants to further their agenda. You also have the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, the Department of Commerce and Agriculture, both houses of Congress, and many more government agencies spraying global warming money at anything that moves and at staggering rates. Billions, with a B, billions of dollars. Whose dollars? Your dollars. And then you have every major and minority university with contributions from every department, from critical literature theory to women's studies, all with their hands out and eager to provide the support to Greenpeace, the government, and others, what others desire to. Add to that another 2 or 3 dozen think tanks, which are also sniffing around for grants or which support government intervention to do the impossible and stop the Earth's climate from changing. That also is NGH. Not going to happen. The climate going to change. Every scientific organization which is dependent on grant money has released a statement saying something must be done about global warming. They're supported, fawned over, and feted by just about every news and media agency. And don't forget the leadership of most major organizations. This is a good point. The leadership of most major organized religions have their own statements, and they have their own hands out. We're not done. We still have to add the dozens of Solyndra-type companies eager to sell the government products to get green subsidies or to support its global warming agenda. Well, who's on the other side? All that's on one side, and what's the other? Well, there's a handful of privately funded think tanks, a smattering of generous individuals and businesses, a journalist here and there, and a few skeptical scientists scratching what living they can, all trying vainly to tell the world that the sky isn't falling and that government intervention isn't needed. So what is it? Big money, folks. Big money. And lots of it. It is the global warming industrial complex. It doesn't stop there. Religious leftists are going to lie, and they're going to get caught. BBC, maybe you heard about this, probably not because they didn't want you to know. BBC and Attenborough accused of fake news misinformation on Climate Change, the Facts. That's a show. Climate Change, the Facts. The Global Warming Policy Foundation, GWPF, has made a formal complaint to the BBC about a series of gross inaccuracies in its recent documentary, Climate Change, the Facts. As wags have quipped, the program presented by Sir David Attenborough was so riddled with errors it really should have been called Climate Change, the Facts. Now the GWPF has written to the BBC Complaints Department, listing just a few of them. The letter, you can read it someplace else. The program went far beyond its remit to present the facts about climate change, instead broadcasting a highly politicized manifesto in favor of renewable energy and unjustified alarm. What? Which brings us to this. I was talking about the BBC. Leftists and the BBC, they want to tell you that the argument is over on the topic. It is over.
Water is rising.
2 intense and deadly storms rocked the globe this week.
Typhoon Mangkhut has rolled into Hong Kong.
Even before the latest storms hit, many people were asking the same key question.
Is climate change making hurricanes worse? Yes.
The scientific debate surrounding climate change may be over.
The facts are crystal clear. Climate change is real.
But not everyone accepts that, making the challenge of reporting on such a charged issue far from simple.
All of this with the global warming and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
Duh. This month, the BBC surprised some by telling their journalists they don't need to include so-called climate deniers in their stories for balance.
I've heard what Al Gore has to say.
Balance, screw it. Balance can go to hell. It's one way, our way, or the highway.
And it's the same old claptrap.
So what reaction is the BBC's move getting?
Been in a bit of trouble over the last 5 to 10 years where there's been some pretty high-profile examples, what we might call a kind of car crash interview, where they'd had situations where the presenter of the show had been sort of not informed enough on the topic and hadn't challenged some of the climate skeptic guests.
What kind of reaction has it generated?
Well, the story that I wrote for Carbon Brief, we obtained the 4-page, what they call a crib sheet, which is effectively guidelines on how to report climate change, and also revealed that they were going to be sort of offering 1-hour training courses to journalists. And actually, it did have quite a big pickup. It had a lot of coverage. So a lot of the national newspapers in the UK covered.
Does this one word beginning with a P come to your mind? Propaganda.
The story, and I was a little bit surprised by that.
How about the letter B, brainwashing?
Journalists, we're all consumed right now with the need for greater transparency to explain our work to a cynical public. Does this help or hurt that effort, in your view?
In my view, I think it does help. I mean, I've reported myself on climate change and on climate science for more than a decade, and it's a difficult nuance to get your head around sometimes, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, particularly online, so it's quite easy for sort of rookie journalists and non-just to sort of outline some of the key underlying science and also some of the sort of bear traps, if you like, the things that some of the reporters have slipped down and fallen on before.
And is it also our tendency really to make sure that we have multiple voices in the stories as a kind of a default?
With something like a scientific issue where there's overwhelming evidence that the world is warming and humans are responsible in the modern era for that warming.
Stop. Overwhelming evidence, and B, anthropogenic in nature. It is there. It is cut and dried. We're not going to listen to anything that goes against our religion. Hence, religious leftists. It's about faith, baby.
The temptation amongst editors and journalists is to get a he said, she said dynamic within, say, a TV interview or even an article that they're writing. And I think that dynamic and that sort of instinct amongst journalists to present both sides of the story has caused a lot of these problems over the years.
Leo, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. But it's barely begun, since the science is, in the overall scope of time, so new that an insufficient period has occurred for us to make what I would consider to be truly informed models and attempt to foretell the future, and thusly try to craft some kind of cogent policy using what I call BZ's decision constant. That is to say, mixing facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, common sense, context, and intent in order to yield a good decision. Or a bad decision if you eschew all those things. Gesundheit. Because of that, the global warming industrial complex is actually, it's an art. It's not a science. It's a matter of clinging to a leftist belief system, which is why I term those people the religious left. For them, it's just a matter of damn faith. Because here are the consequences. You're either a believer or you're a heretic, an apostate, an unbeliever, a heathen, a disruptor, a malcontent. And like the witches at Salem, you need to be cleansed, brother and sister. Oh, by cleansed, yeah, I mean, well, burned at the stake. Personally, professionally, in social media, in articles on television, in videos, you name it. You need to be burned. You need to be scourged. Leftists will readily provide the popcorn, hot dogs, and marshmallows on a stick. Never let a good burning conservative go to waste, is their motto. Leftists have doubled down once more in terms of their media vocabulary. This is from the WashingtonExaminer.com. This was just published on the 17th, a couple of days ago. Newspaper tells staff to use climate emergency and climate denier in news stories. The Guardian has directed all of its staff to use climate emergency or climate crisis instead of in the mealy-mouthed climate change in news stories. According to an internal email, the British newspaper, a proud bastion of liberalism, contends climate change sounds rather passive and gentle, when what scientists are talking about is a catastrophe for humanity. Rather than climate skeptic, terms like climate denier or climate science denier should be used. The email said global heating should be used instead of global warming. Global heating. Righto. Because You know, if we haven't misled enough people, well, it's high past time to corral them up into true PSH territory, where idiot politicians think we do, in fact, only have 12 more years to go before we all blow up, or, I don't know, it rains frogs or camshafts or Cabbage Patch Kids.
I think that
Right?
the part of it that is generational is that millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
Yeah.
And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And like, this is the war. This is our World War II. And I think for younger people, we're looking at this and we're like, how are we saying let's take it easy when 3,000 Americans died last year? How are we saying let's take it easy when the nth person has just died from our cruel and unjust criminal justice system? How are we saying take it easy when the America that we're living in today
How can you
is so
mix your
dystopian?
metaphors like this? Global warming and crime. What?
With people sleeping in their cars so that they can work a second job without health care, and we're told to settle down. It's a fundamental separation between.
Yeah, enough of you. And your biggest issue is how we're going to pay for it? This is another leftist thinking that shit grows on trees. You can just fart more money when you need it, or you can just write laws demanding that people hand over their wallets or hand over their businesses. Well, if you hand over your businesses, that's socialism. If you hand over all your property, that's communism. Yeah, you are one remarkably ignorant bint, and that's one of the largest issues extant. You think anyone is going to work for free. You think budgets mean nothing. Apparently so, because here you are in social media saying precisely that. You're saying that it's a crisis.
Well, it's a crisis. It's quite dramatic making this assertion on Wednesday, declaring a national emergency in relation to climate and environment. But it's necessary because, from everybody from the Met Office to NASA to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has stated that if we don't take radical action across the world, not just here in the UK, we're not going to be able to reverse the damaging effects of climate change. And we've got to bring our emissions down by 45% compared to 2010 levels by 2030 and to reach net zero by 2050. And that requires a national emergency, a mission, if you like, to unlock public investment but also private investment to get everybody in the UK behind this challenge. But we have to take this dramatic action now, because if we don't, we're going to see irreversible damage to our environment and our quality of life, not just here in the UK, but right across the world.
You're all going to die. Okay, maybe not tomorrow. So you can go to the movies tomorrow, and you can buy, you could buy a book tomorrow. Just don't plan on much down the road, okay? 'Cause it's a crisis. Yeah, baby, it's a crisis. And crises pay. Yeah, it's a crisis. It's a crisis if you don't get paid. It's called the GWIC. The Global Warming Industrial Complex. And trust me when I tell you, oh my, every religious leftist wants a big bite out of that GWIC pie.
Monsieur has unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. You want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. And also thanks to Big Sarge Media for simulcasting my show. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And by the way, I am hanging with Boeing. Just thought I'd tell you. And Pratt & Whitney Engines Thrust. You can trust. My tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle 1 refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than an hour. Bank on it. Thanks to Shannon Wright for being here the first hour in her quest to be mayor of Baltimore. And thanks to you listening live, to the people that were in chat, the folks that are listening to me in podcast. I appreciate the time that you take to do all of this, because your time is always in demand. Folks, have a great weekend. We'll see you Tuesday. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Thank you.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.